Hi there, Glocal citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I am your host, Florence Adu, coming to you from a lovely afternoon in a garden in Tema. Yes, that's right, folks. There are lovely gardens all over Accra, or the Accra metropolitan area. And this is a lovely one at a place called the Alyssa Hotel, chain that is long known in Ghana to be the business meeting kind of hotel. And they have a branch that opened last year in Tema. So if you are in Accra and looking for a place to chill in a garden or a pool or in a sky bar, think about Tema. Think about Alyssa Hotel. And that is not meant to be an ad. That's just to show you a little bit of local in our Glocal and to move into our conversation with a fellow Tema localite. She's been on the podcast before. I am so excited. And you know what? I'm going to just own excited because I say it every time because I am excited about this podcast. So yes, I'm excited today to be doing a flashback forward with a guest that's been on the podcast before. Let me just get to her bio and we'll get into our conversation because it's going to be a great one. She is an experienced television host, reporter, producer, public speaker, and published writer. She is the owner of her creative media company, Prosper Creative Group, which produces content, consults with clients, and supports projects in the creative industries. As an advocate for empowering women and girls, she's been outspoken on issues regarding self-esteem, positive body image, and gender equality. She's also a passionate Pan-African who, despite spending the majority of her life living in Canada, has developed a desire to help tell stories that can change the negative narrative of Africa, often portrayed in the media. Ivy Prosper, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yes. Woo-hoo. Yeah. Okay, so let's get started. For those who don't know you and haven't heard, where are you from? Where are you local? And what is your craft?
Well, I like to say I'm from two different places. I'm from Ghana because I was born here, but I was raised in Canada, so it makes me Canadian also. I am local in Ghana. And what is my craft? I'm a storyteller. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's drill down a little bit on your local in Ghana.
Yes.
Because as I mentioned, I was discussing Tema. So,
yes.
So tell us about a local experience in this art Tema.
A local experience in Tema?
Yeah, like.
Well, Tema is just outside Accra. For those who don't know, if you're from New York, it would be like being in Brooklyn instead of being in Manhattan. And it tends to be a little bit of, some people would call it suburban, but they don't use that term really in Ghana. It tends to be more people who are Ghanaians, like a larger proportion of Ghanaians who were born and raised here. You know, they'll say, I'm a Tema girl, I'm a Tema guy, kind of thing. And the city was designed by Kwame Nkrumah. So it's very laid out and it doesn't have the same kind of challenges that Accra might have. And when I say that, what I mean are things like the drainage system. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's a little bit better in Tema. You don't see the flooding that happens as much after rains in Tema as you do in Accra. Also, there's a sense of history. So, and when I say that, what I mean is, like my street, for example, it's all people who it's either their parents or their grandparents worked at some of the companies that were part of the industrialization of Tema. And so they're in these homes that were designed for the purpose of the workers to have a place to live that was close to the industries. So we have these generational, stories. There's people there who, oh yes, my father worked at Valco, or my father worked at the port, or, so I find there's a sense of that. It seems like there's a sense of community in Tema. And being a port city and a coastal city, you can kind of sense that vibe. And there's a lot of development happening as well, because Tema is expanding. So you do see some communities where there's more diaspora who are moving there, like Community 25, where you see more diaspora coming because there's new places being built. So it's an option. Yeah. That's what I feel like Tema is. And Tema has more of the local chop bar feel
Yes.
rather than the metropolitan, urban, big city
Right.
nightlife that you see in Accra. It'll be more like the place with the plastic chairs and plastic tables and someone's playing
Exactly.
some loud music and there's like,
Yeah.
the
Kebab.
kebabs around
Yeah.
and, big screen. People are watching the football match, soccer match. So that's the vibe that I feel with Tema.
I would absolutely agree. And with the exception of new places like this that are trying to bring that cosmopolitan, we have fancy in, yeah, Tema is local. Like you feel local. And like you said, that feeling of community is truly here. And what I would wish is that, or would have wished is that just like all over Ghana, that there had been a more consistent plan of bridging new Tema with old Tema, because there are a lot of geographical, so for example, lagoons, right? Like transitions in landscape between the older parts of Tema and the newer parts of Tema. So I feel like one shortcoming of the generations that follow Kwame Nkrumah is that they didn't necessarily really figure out how to navigate those well to bring the whole community together. So for example, my Tema, I'm in what I call more like Eastern Accra, is what they call the Spintex area, right? And it's still Tema because the land. So the history of a lot of Tema, it was the Nungwa people around the shore side. So Teshi, and even over to parts of East Legon. So that side across the motorway is the Nungwa people's land. And so that's their Gans. Yeah, part of the Gan people, exactly. So all of that land was their land. And so all of the expansion has been just, negotiating with them. Oh, we'll take more of this, we'll take more of that, and we'll take more of that. And yet there wasn't that conversation about, well, how do we continue to bridge ourselves? And we're seeing it a little bit more with the Beach Road expansion that helps collect closer to the port. But beyond that, connecting old Tema with a Ashaiman broader, right? So on to 25, and I guess it starts, 22?
The newer parts of Tema?
Right, the newer parts. Is it
From Community 18 going are the newer parts of Tema.
Sure. Oh, okay, yes. So I'm part of that,
yeah,
right?
18 and up are newer parts of Tema.
And so I'll say the eastern expansion, because so my side is the western expansion, but the eastern expansion, that's where I feel like you have the pon, which is the separation. And that is another type of, exactly, yes, physical barriers to the actual community building. So that's what I'm getting at. It's like there could have been, or should be, a little bit more thought about how do we continue to build our communities with the resources from infrastructure that would make it a metropolis that could be economically more viable. Mm-hmm. That's economic developer me talking, but that's our local. So when you come to Ghana, and someone says, oh, I'm staying in 25, you'll know what we're talking about.
Yes, and something people should know about Tema too is and this is recognized globally, and the Navy officially recognizes this, that the city of Tema is the closest point to the Earth on the 0 degrees mark, where the equator and the prime meridian cross each other. It is actually in the ocean that it crosses each other, but Tema is the closest place on the Earth where human beings live to that mark. So they often call Tema the center of the world. Yeah.
Indeed. New facts. So let's talk about how moving ourselves forward. So give us a little bit of background about why the where. So we know from last time, but the fast forward version, so we get to the where now of what you're doing. So why the where? How did you come to be living, working, playing back from Canada into Ghana, and the fast forward of your last 5 years?
Okay. So initially I came to Ghana 2011 and stayed for a couple of years. That wasn't my first time in Ghana, but that was my first time to be living in Ghana. 2011 to 2013, did that for a couple of years. At the time I worked at SOS College, the high school, and I was in charge of a creative writing center. And then I also hosted a TV show. I was a reporter and host of the Maternal Health Channel TV series, covering stories of maternal health across the country. And then I went back to Canada in 2013, came back to Ghana in 2016. So I've been living here now since 2016. And part of that time, in the beginning, I worked with a production company working on documentary projects. I was working as a producer. And then I ended up working in the tourism space as the social media manager for Ghana's major campaign, the Year of Return, and then Beyond the Return, where I was responsible for the digital marketing, promoting of this campaign that was inviting the African diaspora around the world to come to Ghana and experience the history, culture, heritage, and even consider relocation to Ghana. I did that for 5.5 years. And it was a really phenomenal experience getting to meet so many different people and telling stories, telling the narrative of Ghana. And I've had a lot of people who've said that the work that I did influenced them in coming to the country. I also have a YouTube channel where I tell stories from Ghana. I share tips and advice. I share the positive, and I also share sometimes some of the challenging experiences in Ghana as well. I interview people so that they can share their experiences about coming to Ghana. And then I wrote a book called Your Essential Guide on Moving to Ghana. The first edition was published in 2018, and then I updated it, and the second edition was published in 2019. And the whole goal of that was answering people's questions. A lot of people, when they were seeing that I was here and they were seeing I was sharing so much stuff online about Ghana, they started sending me messages in my DMs asking about, how can I do this? How can I do that? I want to come to Ghana. What about this? And I found that I would be spending hours just answering the same questions over and over and over. So then came the book to answer those questions in one place. So now when people send me a DM, I'm like, I send them the link. Questions are all answered here, So I did that for a while, and I've done freelance work with different production companies like ITV News from the UK. Most recently, I did something with CBC, Noble Films from Canada. And it's been a really great experience doing a lot of these things that contribute to telling stories and shaping the narrative of Ghana and Africa overall. That's, in a nutshell, some of the things that I do. And then most recently, I'm the host for a podcast called Nature Answers by Farm Radio, telling stories from sub-Saharan Africa, where local communities are being affected by climate change, and they are finding nature-based solutions to solve some of the issues that they're facing. Some of the things are due to climate change, and some of the things are actually due to the behaviors of people in the community, but they're finding nature-based solutions to solve some of their challenges. So that's what I've been doing.
Yes.
That's my quick in a nutshell.
Okay. So now let's peel it back. So the Year of Return and Beyond Return were a real global phenomenon.
A real phenomenon. I agree with that.
Yeah,
100%.
Particularly for the diaspora of the African diaspora. Like, it definitely called attention to and brought so many people from across the globe to Ghana. And so if you were to reflect on, I want to say, because this is business, the business impact, just thinking about how Ghana has changed from a business perspective in that time that you were there. What would be your macro observations?
From a business perspective, I would say the industry that personally I've seen get the most benefit has been both real estate as well as hospitality. So from a business perspective, if you're a person who works in customer service, hospitality, it was a chance for you to leverage the fact that all of these people were responding to the call to come to Ghana, whether it's for vacation or relocation. And then people who are in real estate, they also have benefited greatly, because the people who come and want to live here or want to stay for extended periods, and they might not necessarily want to go to a hotel, but they may want to rent an apartment for 6 months. They've also benefited from a business standpoint, and some of them have really understood what the needs are of the diaspora, because their needs are different than what the local Ghanaian wants. And that's not to say that one is better than the other. It's just that many of them are leaving an environment and coming to a new place. And in trying to adjust to being in a new environment, they want the place that they call home to feel familiar. So they're looking for spaces that will resemble what they're used to and have the amenities of what they're used to. So some of these real estate companies have capitalized on it, creating buildings, apartments especially, because Ghana wasn't really a place that apartments were a big thing. Right. There were some apartments, like in Tema, there were some apartments. I remember so I have family members who lived in an apartment in Tema, but it's like a 3-rise, apartments. And near the beach road, there's also some apartments there that are, I think, 3 stories, and they've been there for a long time. But it wasn't a common thing for multiple high-rise buildings to be going up in Ghana. But now we're seeing so many different real estate companies building apartments to sell as condominiums, the way that we have in the West or in Europe. So from a macro level, I would say the real estate industry, hospitality are the 2 areas that have benefited the most business-wise from that campaign.
We definitely had a real estate boom, and you were part of a myth busting exercise.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that was a whole social media sensation. And you were like, you know what? Let me just set the record straight because I am knowledgeable.
Yes.
So we appreciate that.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes. So there was a content creator who made a video, and he was very adamant that the government has given land to Black Americans. They had a meeting and discussed that they're going to give them 200 acres to start this. And he spoke with such authority as if he knew what he was talking about. And I watched it and I was like, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. And he's acting like he does. And then I just ignored it and just moved along. But every day, multiple people were sending his video to me in my DMs and saying, Ivy, is this true? Ivy, is this true? Ivy, we know you talk about Ghana. Is this true? So everybody was looking at me as the authority, looking to me to give them the answer. And I'm like, I was responding to people at first, and I was like, this is just like what happened with the book.
Oh,
responding to the same question
right.
over and over and over again. Then I said, you know what? I need to just make a video and talk about it. And so I did a response video, and the response video started to correct some of the misconceptions. People started sharing it, but his video had over 1 million views. So people were still quoting him. People were still dismissing me. Like, although yes, some people were saying, okay, yeah, Ivy corrected it. This is the truth. There were still people who were sending me messages saying, you're wrong. Why do you think you know what you're talking about? This guy, yes, I had people saying that to me, that I'm wrong and he knows.
Wow.
I'm like, him who hasn't set foot in this country,
right.
He knows? I'm like, I'm literally 15 minutes away from where the land is that they are talking about. So I was like, I need to go there at a point. So when Alvin, who's one of the people who own the land, there's the Ghanaians, so there's Ghanaians who own the land, and then they partnered with Shaka Bars and Earn Your Leisure. So I know the Ghanaian guys. I also know Shaka Bars. And so when Alvin was going to be going to the land with the Earn Your Leisure guys, he reached out and he was like, hey, you want to come and see the land? I'm like, yes, I am coming with my camera guy. I'm going to come and make a video. So I went. I went with my camera crew, interviewed Alvin, interviewed the Earn Your Leisure guys, and interviewed Shaka Bars so they can dispel this myth and be like, I'm talking to the actual people who are doing this development, and they've confirmed it's not the government. The government is not involved. They've confirmed they're not making their own city. It is a gated community, which is a common thing in Ghana. Ghana has had gated communities for like 30, 40 years. They've been doing gated communities for a long time, and gated communities were always associated with prestige, like as in you're middle class now, so now you can afford to live somewhere where you have a gate man and you're an estate kind of thing. So it was associated with that or with security. You feel like you have the security man there who won't let people come inside unless they say who they're coming to see, kind of thing. So it's a thing Ghana has always had. And I think that because they called it Sambra City, the city part is what made people confused and start saying it's a city. But it's like we have other gated communities where they use the word city, like Apollonia City is not a city. It's just a gated community also with that name.
Yeah. So real estate development, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty cool because now they use my video to share with people when people have, misinformation. And I still have people sending me messages with the new video now saying, thank you for clarifying. Thank you for clarifying. One woman I met when I went to the land that day said, oh my goodness, I watched your video. It's because of you that I'm even coming here to do this thing with the land today. Because she was like, I wasn't sure if it really was some kind of segregation kind of thing or if the government was really involved. But now when I saw your video, I felt more comfortable that it's something that I could be a part of. I was like, okay, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So that brings up a good topic on diaspora, right? Because that has been the story and what you've worked on primarily. And so now that you've transitioned out of Return and beyond, You're focused squarely on this Pan-African storytelling and really bridging more of that bridging of your choice. So leaving working for an organization and now being able to bring out your own personal brand, how are you positioning a lot of these diaspora stories alongside local stories for it to have the kind of impact that you would envision that continues to open minds?
What I want is for people to be able to just tell their story from their perspective, which I think is really important. But one of the challenges with telling some of our local stories is sometimes people don't want to talk on camera. Ghanaians sometimes don't want to talk on camera, even when they have a really compelling story. And I think also, believe it or not, being a woman sometimes can be challenging when you want to tell certain stories. There's a particular person who I wanted to tell his story about becoming a millionaire and all that stuff and what he does. And I felt like he was dismissive of me. I did a video at his private jet lounge here in Accra, and I was not commissioned by him or his organization. I was invited to come and see how the lounge is and how everything was being done. So when I got there, I decided to just make the video on my own. I made the video. The video went viral, and it's the one video that I forgot to say, hello, my name is Ivy Prosper. And I also forgot to put my watermark on the video. And then I just posted it. Next thing I knew, it went viral and it was being reshared in WhatsApp platforms. People were sharing it on their own YouTube pages. And then the Daily Graphic used the video on their platform as if it was their video. And then people started asking me, oh, Ivy, you're working for the Graphic now? And it's like, no, I'm not working for the Graphic now. They took my video. And that video went viral and put a lot of spotlight on the private jet lounge. And so I wanted to do an interview with Mr. McDan, who owns the private jet lounge, just to talk about his story of coming from humble beginnings to becoming millionaire and having a private jet lounge. And I felt like he was very dismissive. He gave me his book and signed his book and gave it to me. And then I said that I wanted to do an interview, but I really felt like he was dismissive of the idea of me doing an interview with him. But then he granted an interview to Wodamaya. He granted an interview to Wodamaya as well as got him to be in his jet, give him a ride in his jet. And I just thought to myself, I made a video that went viral about your private jet lounge. And now I don't even get a chance to interview you. I think that I am a woman who could have really done a great story talking about his journey and everything, but I felt a bit dismissed. And sometimes I feel that way when approaching some people wanting to do interviews, is the dismissiveness because of the patriarchal kind of thing. You're a woman, there's that. But then what's more prevalent is people who are just afraid to talk on camera, who don't want to, they feel shy. Like I had a man who he's in his 80s and he was a military man and served in Ghana's military during the time when the British were around and all that stuff. And he has a story to tell. I want him to tell his story. And he doesn't want to talk on camera. And I'm just like, you have such a great story. You don't want to talk on camera, you know? So it ends up being the diaspora stories that get told more because they're the ones who are more open,
right?
To be on camera.
Culturally,
Yeah. And also there could be a communication barrier too, because maybe if I was a local journalist working at one of the local TV stations, because sometimes people in Ghana will say, oh, which media house are you with? Is it TV3? Is it GTV? So it's like they need that local validation. Sometimes they don't understand when you say YouTube. But I know it's opening because we see a lot of creators now being able to tell stories. I think just continuing to tell stories in general, using my platform and asking the right questions of people is really what I'm doing to try to tell the stories properly. And when I work with different production companies that come in, when I work as a fixer or a ground producer, what I would like is being able to have the input to tell them things that we should avoid or we should highlight, amplify so that the story is told correctly. For instance, there was one organization that I did something with and, we were in Osu and I was like, this is a neighborhood in Osu, in Accra. but they kept wanting to call it a village. And I'm like, but this is a neighborhood and a crowd, but they kept wanting to call it a village. So it's like being there to correct things is, I think, really a key part of what I want to be doing when I'm helping some of these foreign projects when they come, so they don't use the wrong language when talking about something to mislead, what that is. Because can you imagine someone saying Osu is a village? It's like,
Right.
you know,
In 2025.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Far from that.
yeah, so it's those little details that I like to be a part of to make sure that our stories are told correctly.
And what you're kind of touching on is an aspect of your business that people don't know so much about. And it is that fixing, right?
Yes.
It is that being that bridge in the communities, because people come all the time from outside to make content, and they need people like you. So take us through a little bit about what that involves and some of your experiences working in that space.
So when you're working as a fixer or as a local ground producer on a project, you're I basically end up becoming the person, their go-to person when they need to do things like getting their permits, getting bookings for, things they need to do, whether it's hotels or, their visas, helping them understand, getting them transportation, the logistics. Because, for example, I'll be on a Zoom call as your initial, and they'll be like, oh, but when we looked at the map, it looked like this is only 15 minutes from here to here. So we figured we can do this here and then do this at that time, and we can easily get it all done in a day. And it's like, no, you have to explain to them, I understand here, I'm on the ground. It may look that one way on the map, but this is the reality. So it's being that person who can understand the people here too when it comes to communicating in different ways. Because sometimes they'll just call somebody and say, hey, this, and then they think it's going to be done. It's like, no, there's like some massaging that needs to be done in Ghana if you want to get certain things done. But yeah, so being a fixer, helping them with the budget, figuring out all the things that you need to get your project done effectively in this country, because there are some things you may not be able to do. Helping them with renting equipment because they may not know where to go, who has the reliable equipment, because you can just randomly call someone and you don't know if they're going to be somebody you can depend on when you need it. So being a fixer or a ground producer it can be challenging at times because you're also working with different personalities, because a crew may come, they might be a crew between 5 to 10 people, and they all have different personalities, different expectations, and you have to be able to work with all of them with everything that you're doing. So yeah.
Would you say that that's kind of a growing sector of the entertainment business here?
I would definitely say so, especially when announcements like Idris Elba saying that, he's coming to open a film studio. It opens up people's eyes like, oh, if he's coming to open a film studio, then there must be something happening there that we can come and tap into. So I do think that it's a growing industry in Ghana. There are people who've been doing fixing for a long time here. I know that, but it's definitely something people are tapping into more, especially as we see African films on Netflix, African films getting more recognition at different awards or different film festivals, and just the overall culture of Africa being something people are now paying attention to. I think that it draws people to think, oh, this is a place we can come and film something. Or if you're even tapping into fashion, music, like there's different things that people might come here to do, because I know Vogue has come here to do photo shoots before. So there's different elements of working with some of these foreign organizations that I think is just growing and growing and growing as we see people's interest in Africa continuing to grow.
So it's a critical link in the ecosystem. So there's opportunity there.
Most
So
definitely.
particularly young people that have diverse exposure might be a place to think about.
Yeah. And I think young people need to understand that some of these kinds of jobs aren't something that you just apply for. You think that it's just like, I'm going to school and I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then I can get this kind of job. It's something that kind of, as you've crafted your brand, your personal brand of who you are, what you do, you can end up becoming a go-to person, whether it's in this creative space or in something else. Like I met a young woman who she was like, oh, madame, I can't find a job. Can you help me? And she said she graduated from school doing accounting and she can't find a job. And I was like, do you have a phone? And she was like, yeah. I'm like, is it a smartphone where you have apps and everything on it? And I say this because for those who may be listening abroad, some people in Ghana may have a phone, but they don't have a smartphone. They may have a basic phone just for calls. So I specifically, and they call it a YAM phone here. So I basically asked her that because I wanted to know what her access was. And she's like, oh, yes, she has a smartphone. And I said, so do you go on TikTok? Do you go on Facebook? And she was like, yes. I said, you can go on TikTok and I said, within a year, you can brand yourself as an expert accountant. And she was like, how? And I'm like, every day post a 3 to 5 minute TikTok where you are giving people tips related to accounting. Or if there's a breaking news story that's related to the finance or money business or something, do a short TikTok, talk about it. And I'm like, I guarantee you, if you post a TikTok every day for 365 days, you will be seen as a go-to person in accounting. Whether you've branded yourself as a specialist in Ghana or a general specialist, you will be seen as a go-to person. And I said, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be hired to go and work for a company, but somebody might want a consultation from you. Somebody who's running a business in Ghana and doesn't understand all of the rules when it comes to accounting and their books, they may say, hey, this girl has some expertise. She has this many views and she's consistent. And they might reach out to you, So I think that people have the capacity to use the digital tools we have to brand themselves. Because I think that's what happened with me.
Right.
I was already promoting Ghana before I got the job with Ghana Tourism. And when I interviewed there, I was told that they already saw what I was doing. They already knew what I was doing. The manager of the office recommended me for the interview. But when I went to the interview, the CEO already had seen stuff that I'd been doing. Some of the staff there told me that they had already been seeing what I'd been doing. Some of them told me they were already following me on social media. So I had already created a brand of myself as somebody promoting Ghana, And so when you use your platform to show people what you can do, and that can actually bring you the work you're looking for, and some people don't recognize that.
I mean, a lot of these are things that are not what is, I want to say, inherent or intuitive based on what our education system
That's
is,
true.
how it's structured.
You're right.
And so we are the mentors.
Yeah.
And so you did well, Auntie.
Thank you.
Or Madame.
Thank you. Yes, I hope she listened.
Right. Well, they're also shy about actually getting to go. So
yeah, the start. Yeah. But I won't stop with my advice I give to young people, because that's one of the things that I believe is part of my purpose, is changing the lives of young people, one conversation at a time. So in Ghana here, whenever I meet young people, a lot of times I'm giving them advice about certain things based on the situation or the scenario.
Right.
I don't just jump in and give advice, but it all depends on the scenario, For example, on the red carpet at, I think it was Rhythms on the Runway.
Okay.
And
that was recently.
No, this was a few years ago. And the person who was going to ask me questions said, so what are your expectations of the event? And I said, cut. To the camera guy, cut. And I said, listen, this what are your expectations question, every single one of the people on the red carpet in Ghana asked that exact same question. What are your expectations? I said, did you ask the person who came before me this question? He was like, yes. I said, and the person before that, yes. So you're asking everybody the same question. So when you go to edit, you're going to have a boring edit, because you're not going to have a variety of the way people answer questions if your whole thing is always, what are your expectations? And then it go to the cut, it's like, oh, it's just like, people might say the same
thing.
things.
Yeah.
I said, if you know who the person is that's approaching you, because there might be some people that you know who they are, and you might be like, oh, I know who this person is. Think about who they are, what they've done, and craft your question based on who they are, And then if you don't know who they are, that's fine. Think of something else. We are at a fashion event. Think about if there are designers that you know who are going to be here. Because I'm like, this is all part of preparation. If you're a journalist, you're a reporter on a red carpet, you should have gotten a list of who the designers are. You could just be like, oh, I saw that there's a few designers here that are from Ghana, some are from Nigeria. Do you think that we have a battle between Ghana and Nigeria, like how we do with Jollof? Like, you can have like some creative questions. And he was like, oh. Anyway, I didn't see him again after that. And 3 years later, at this most recent Rhythms on the Runway, a journalist was about to ask me some questions on the red carpet, and the camera guy said, "Madame, you are the lady who told that reporter that was with me 3 years ago what he should do when he's on the red carpet, blah, blah, blah." He was like, "Do you know after that, the guy improved.
Oh,
He
wow.
was so much better." He said he worked with him for a while and he was so much better. And the guy has wanted to thank me for the advice I gave, but he hasn't seen me again.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was good
You
to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was good to see that
Oh.
what I said had resonated with him, that he improved. You know, so for me, one conversation at a time with young people.
That's it. So that's a good point to ask about Glocal Speak. So what is your latest and greatest word, saying, or phrase that is a meaningful part of your local experience? And why do you value it as Glocal Speak?
My greatest phrase.
Latest phrase that is Glocal Speak in your ears.
Get it done.
Okay. Yeah.
Get it done.
Yeah. Yeah. Particularly where you are in this transition. Not transition, you've transitioned out, but get it done.
Yeah, because so getting it done and getting it done well and trying to be 1% better every day. Yeah. So I left my role after 5.5 years with Ghana Tourism Authority and jumped in full force to do my own business, my company, Prosper Creative Group, which I had actually registered a long time ago, but I hadn't really focused on it because I'd been working. And so going head first and knowing that if I don't get it done, there's no money coming. If I don't get it done, the growth is not happening. And I have to get it done well so that people keep coming back to me. Because if I get it done, but it's not done well, then people will be like, this is garbage. But I have to keep doing it and doing it well. And then trying to be 1% better every day is also something I'm trying to do. Because it can be easy to just fall back and be like, okay, I'm good, I've done it, I'm good, and not improve and just try to ride on your laurels of people are saying I'm good, people are saying they're enjoying my content, and then just relax. I don't want to just relax. I want to keep it going and try to be a little bit better every time that I do it. The problem with that sometimes is it sometimes holds me back. I'll be like, oh my God, this isn't that good. I shouldn't post it. It's not that good. I shouldn't post it. So sometimes it can be a hindrance too.
So yeah, sometimes your own worst critic.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk about the 1% better every day. How, if you were to, give some advice on how someone could organize themselves to even recognize that tweak every day that you feel better, Is it a physical experience? Is it a mental experience? Like, is it a monetary experience? How do you quantify and qualify those improvements?
How do I quantify and qualify getting better?
Yeah, the small increments of better.
I think it's from writing it down. So I bought this journal where I'm writing in the journal. I haven't been good with being consistent every day, but as much as possible, I'll write 3 things that I think I've accomplished that day. And what I can do is every time I go back and look at stuff, I can be like, have I improved in how I do this? Have I gotten better in how I do this? So I wouldn't necessarily say it's something that I measure by number or anything, but it's really by feeling like I've done it when I see it, when I see the work. So like if I edit something and then the next time I edit it a little bit differently or I add something different, I'm like, oh, this just put it up a notch. Or I learned something about color correcting and how to make something a little bit better, then I'll try it again the next time. And then each time you do it, you get a little bit better because it's like the whole practice makes perfect thing. So I think it's just little tweaks, like you were saying. It's not something that is huge, because I think sometimes people think you have to see this massive, huge change, but it can just be little by little. It can be like when you use exercise as an example, it could be yesterday you did 10 reps, but today you did 11. That's your 1% improvement.
Yes.
Tomorrow you did 12. Like it just be your little improvements, and then you start to see the results with every little improvement, as long as you're being consistent with it. Because even this This month has been horrible for me on YouTube, actually, because I haven't had videos coming out as quickly because of the work that I did last month doing the fixer work. I was a little bit preoccupied. And so now I wanted a little bit of downtime, but now I'm like, oh my goodness, my numbers are so low. I need to get myself back on track. So before we met today, I was even working on editing, and I was editing an old video actually that I never put out. I have a lot of content that I've never put out. And it's like when more time passes, I'm afraid to put it out because I'm like, this isn't as good as what I have now. Should I put it out? But now I'm like, I'm going to just put it out, especially after I was thinking about somebody. I saw a video where somebody was talking about people die and they die with all their ideas. They die with all of the things. Someone I worked with, the man I worked with on the maternal health show, Dr. Kwesi Owusu, he passed away recently in London. And his funeral was last week. I watched it online. And when he passed away, a lot of people said, he's died with a lot of ideas. He was working on a High Life documentary. He never got to finish it. Will somebody take over? So all these things. Then I was like, you know what, Ivy, this may be old and it may not be what you think it should be, but just edit it and put it out because there's somebody who's going to want to know about this story. So I was editing this morning before we met, trying to get that done so that I can put that video out because I have a couple of guys editing for me other content, the newer content. So I'll let them work on that, and then I'm going to work on some of
Go through your archives,
content. Yeah, bring it out.
Good job.
Yeah.
Or good thinking, because what I find is that even though we may not recognize it, so much of the information we have is evergreen, and it will always have some value.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And this one is, I'll talk about it. I grew up in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, a town a lot of people don't know about. But every time I say that I grew up in St. Catharines to African Americans, I'm always expecting them to be like, oh, wow. But that's not the response because our education system has failed us. So that city is where Harriet Tubman lived when she came to Canada through the Underground Railroad and helped a lot of enslaved Africans escape America and end up in Canada. So where I grew up, there's a historical landmark, which is a church that she used to go to. And so I filmed there in 2022. I went and filmed there and I interviewed the woman who's the trustee of the church because her great-great-great-grandfather was a pastor there when Harriet Tubman was attending the church. And so I did a video with her. She did like this tour where she was talking about everything. So I videoed it and then I never put it out.
Oh.
And so it's going to be obvious it's an old video because she's wearing a mask because it was the days when they were telling everybody to wear a mask. But it's good content. She's talking about a history people don't know about Harriet Tubman being in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And then a few other abolitionists, people who were very much into the movement of freeing Black people in Canada because even though they were freed in Canada, there was still racism in Canada too. So yeah, it's good content. Like you said, it's going to be evergreen content because it's a piece of history.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I was working on, was that.
So we look out for that.
Yeah.
In May.
Yes. Yes.
I love it. So speaking of work and the Ivy that is now developing her own brand and putting out these types of content. Last year, we were at a birthday party of fellow Glocal citizen, Emmanuel Tip. And we started talking just generally about life and everything. And one thing that with your Ivy Prosper show, I think you basically said you were going to do a show and do it, and now it is a reality. So tell us about the Ivy Prosper show.
So that is where I'm going to be talking more about women's health, women's lifestyle issues, and particularly I've been talking about menopause. So that is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I need to push it more because I'm now trying to balance doing that with doing my regular YouTube where I talk about diaspora and Ghana stories. But that is something that I feel as a woman in her early 50s, going through hormonal changes, life changes. And it's not only menopause that I'll talk about, but I also want to have stories of women who are doing things in life, whether it's starting a new business, whether it's now they're divorced and they're having to start over again at a different stage of life. So midlife stories from women, really. I may be in my early 50s, but there's women in their 40s who are going through things as well. So I really want it to be a lot of midlife stories of women and fashion, work, health, lifestyle. That's what my focus on that is going to be. Yeah. And I really want to get to the point where I get to interview some high profile people as well who are willing to talk. Because I see how Halle Berry's talking about menopause a lot now.
Right,
I would love to be talking to some of the people who are in the industry talking about these things now as well. Yeah.
Finally shining a light on a huge part of women's existence that
was dismissed and made the butt of jokes. Because I remember growing up and not really understanding what menopause was, but I remember seeing jokes on sitcoms about, oh, she's going through this, she's going through that. But I didn't know what it was at the time. I was just a kid watching these things.
Right. We just knew that it was older women.
Yeah.
And none of the other things. And, increasingly as I educate myself on the array of different life changes that are what the English language has, bottled into this concept of menopause, because I think also other cultures have developed different ways of dealing with it and addressing with it, because they have understood that it's a process and not a point, right? And so when I start to understand a lot of the different diagnoses that people get are actually not these diseases that are, potentially life-threatening or, chronic or what have you. They just happen to be about this snapshot of life. It just really makes me understand how little we women are allowing ourselves, and the world is allowing ourselves to know ourselves.
Yeah.
So
it's very true.
So thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you.
I'll be calling you, Ivy, when's the next episode? I have someone for you.
I know it's overdue. I've not done a few interviews. Like I said, last month was a really hectic month with me with the fixing. My goal is to be able to grow my business so I can have a team, because right now my team is very small, but the goal is to grow so I have a bigger team. So I'm able to do all of these different things that I have envisioned to be doing and growing. Yeah.
So when you think about growing your team, and I want to position this as a mindset hack, how do you envision yourself hacking your mindset to be able to do that? Or if it is, to grow your team. Like I'm sure you've worked with them before, but particularly for your own business and for your own brand, because I find that in my own experience that it's been difficult for me to grow a team because of the way that I am so particular, right? And that, when you're a brand.
Yeah.
So when you think about growing a team, what kind of mindset hack would you need to, or do you project will be necessary?
I need somebody who has a vision for growth.
Somebody who mindset.
Because I need somebody who's not complacent. Because I find what we have in our environment here in Ghana is sometimes there's people who are complacent. They're okay that they have something and they're getting their monthly salary, and they don't go above and beyond to try to grow in it. So I need somebody who's willing to grow, somebody who can be independent, who has a mindset they can be independent. I don't have to be micromanaging you. I can give you your tasks and then you can execute. Yeah, I think that's what I'm looking for.
Okay. In terms of how you now have to hack your mindset to be able to identify.
My mindset. Yes. So my mindset, this one's a really difficult one, because sometimes when I'll delegate, I'll be like, I can do better. And then I want to just do it myself anyway. And then it's like, what's the point of having that person when you constantly are trying to do it yourself? So my mind hack has to be learning to let go and let them do it. Learning to let go and let them do it. And trust that I've chosen the right people to be able to execute the work.
Right. And I think that does relate to your wanting to have a growth mindset, because it's very difficult to let go when you already have an understanding that I'm not sure if they have a growth mindset. I'm not sure if they're going to be independent. So then but by default, have to micromanage. And then ultimately it's more time. I will say in my world, I find that the time it takes based on what our education system delivers to us, the time it takes to bring someone up to speed is time that could be spent doing the work,
Mhm.
right? For me, as opposed to really investing. So a lot of it is, and it's the economic constraints. Like the time I'm taking, I could be more productive, but am I willing to make the investment to bring someone up so that we as an ecosystem are better off? So I think that is what we as like senior professionals probably need to think about is like maybe how do we collaborate to train a group and really get people who we know we can trust and create an academy or something so that we know
That's a
that
great
we've
idea.
done what's necessary so we don't have this burden. Because if it's just me doing it, then it's harder, but if it's a pool of us rotating them around. And so it makes a lot of sense. That's kind of what they do in the corporate sectors with these rotating internships and things like that. Yeah.
Yes. That's a really great idea.
All right. We're going to have to
Yeah.
start to get to the drawing board. Because, I mean, there's enough of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
interesting.
Mhm.
Okay. So let's talk about, I want to talk a little bit more about farm radio
Mhm.
because I'm just it's so interesting that whole concept. I love it as an education tool. Tell us a little bit more about how that came to be and what it's like working with those stories.
This is another example of your work speaking for you and having people who believe in you. So I have a friend who's been working in the radio industry in Canada for a long time, and she heard about this position that farm radio, they have offices in Ghana, and that they were looking for somebody to be their season 2 podcast host. And so she recommended me. And so I did a Zoom interview with them, and then they looked at some of my work online, and then they said they loved my work, and they had me read a script just to see how my voice is when they listened to it as a team. And they were like, we listened to a lot of voices, and yours was the most, of what we wanted, and the most engaging and calm, and just like, you just really wanted to listen more. So then that's how it came to be. Yeah. So it's been a really interesting experience. Yeah. And I'm learning a lot.
Right. The whole Pan-African story and climate change. So I love that. And we're going to definitely put links to all of your channels, but definitely that story.
Yeah. People need to listen. It's just really cool to hear stories of these people who they're kind of like unsung heroes in their neighborhoods and their communities where they're fighting for, let's try this new sustainable way of growing this. Let's abandon this way. And people will be like, no, we don't want to do that. And then the person just keeps persisting. And then they show, look at my crops. They're growing. It's a drought, but my crops are still growing and yours are not. Then they realize, oh, maybe that person is right. It's really kind of interesting to see that there's people in these small communities doing this and people whose stories would otherwise not be heard. Yeah.
And ways of life that are, we poo-poo indigenous so much because capitalism has created that need. But small communities don't need to import solutions. They have them at their fingertips. And that is clearly what the farm radio and it's the show is called Nature Answers.
Yeah.
Nature Answers.
Yeah.
Straight to the point.
It is straight to the point. Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a lot of talk about business and all the ins and outs of working. Let's talk about playing and what you do in your leisure.
Let's talk about playing.
So I always ask, are you a reader, watcher, or listener? What are your favorite reads, watches, or listens? Or what else do you do in your leisure? So what does Ivy do, or what is Ivy doing these days when she's not working?
When I'm not working, I've actually started going to the gym, which I'm doing largely because I've noticed my body changing. I've been somebody who's been blessed my whole life where I really didn't have to go to the gym. But I did. I was an athlete in school and all that. So I did exercise and that kind of thing. But typically in my grown adult life, I would go to the gym from time to time. But I noticed now in midlife how there's changes happening. Muscles aren't as strong. And so, so I've been going to the gym. So I've been using usually my mornings, usually early morning, I'll go to the gym. I really like getting together with friends, to be honest, like simple things, seeing friends or family. I'm over the whole party scene thing, once in a while, if someone's having a birthday or whatever, different festivals, I don't mind going, but it's not a top priority for me. I like experiences, like if there's some kind of food tasting or, some textile event, like I like things that are like engaging when it comes to culture and food and learning about ourselves. Spa experiences and just resting even. Sometimes resting is nice.
I tell you.
Sometimes just not going anywhere. And
so much of that is necessary. And just the stillness. Yeah, I get it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially being an entrepreneur, a solopreneur for the most part. It really, I value just shutting out and just being slow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's new and next? We talked a little bit about it, and you talked about this new video, but looking at your 360 in the next 6 to 12 months, what's new and next for Ivy Prosper?
I would like to do a short film. I started shooting something already, but I would like to do a short film, finish it. And
any specific topic? Documentary, fiction?
No, I don't want to say yet.
Okay.
Yeah. And I want to do a series. I've been talking to somebody. There's a friend of mine who has a production company. He goes back and forth between Ghana and New York. And so we've been talking about possibly doing something.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So a series, scripted, unscripted?
A scripted series.
Okay.
Yeah, a scripted series. We talked about scripted. We've actually talked about both scripted and unscripted. I'm leaning towards the scripted one, and he's leaning towards that we need to do the unscripted one. So, but yeah, we've been talking about this for a while. So hopefully
it all sounds fun.
We'll start before the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, we have more than 6 months at this point. So
yes,
we'll be knocking on your door. Where's the premiere? So yeah. Okay,
Thanks.
Cool. This has been so lovely.
Yes, it has. I always enjoy talking to you.
I know. We do get together when we're not so busy and just gab. So this has been lovely.
Yeah.
Do you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with our listeners?
Any last thoughts? I would say anyone who is trying to do something, particularly later in life, to value all of the things that you've learned through your life, because all of those things make you who you are and can actually help you in what you're planning to do, if that makes any sense. Because we don't realize how, you may have been working, maybe you worked in a restaurant for 10 years and maybe you worked in a call center, but there are skills from like both those experiences that you can take if you're planning to be an entrepreneur or run someone else's business as a CEO or whatever it may be, that you can take and use that are wisdom. And sometimes we don't value it. We don't realize that those frustrations you felt as a person at the call center were teaching you patience. They were teaching you how to resolve problems from people complaining when they called. Maybe the restaurant, there was a lot of things that happened with the food and you've learned this is what you should do better this time around. So there's so many things in life that we don't realize. So I would say value all your life experiences because they were all teaching moments that help you to become a better you and also to do the things you plan in a better way because you have the knowledge to do so. And don't be afraid to try. Life is not promised. Tomorrow's not promised. And the last thing you want is to have a life of regret. Because one thing that I always see is people who are, on their deathbed or they're dying, they know that there are things they wish they did that they never did. Now they're like, I could have, I should have, I didn't. So don't let that happen to you.
Yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Just like getting it done.
Yes.
That's a great way to leave it. Thank you, Ivy.
You're welcome. Thank you too.
All right, Glocal citizens, this has been another episode of the podcast. You can catch us Tuesdays with new episodes at glocalcitizenspod.com or wherever you get your podcast. Please do like, share, subscribe, leave us a review. Check out our show notes. You can find out where you can catch all of Ivy's programs and posts and socials there. And until next time, let's get it done. Bye for now.